Welcome to Make Your Point, Season 2, the quarterfinals. I am Priyanka Lala, and it is my pleasure to once again be your chairperson. It is exciting to see all of our astounding debate teams back at the Dagger Auditorium UE, ready to compete for the title of Make Your Point National Champion. Once again, a special welcome to the schools debating at this stage for the first time, and those in this competition for the first time. Now to the quarters. As 6 teams go head-to-head in this televised national secondary schools debate, we expect excellence, confidence, and teamwork. The schools participating in this episode, vying for the 4 spots in the semi-finals, are Queen's Royal College, Astor Boys College, San Fernando Central Secondary School, Marabella South Secondary School, Hillview College, and El Dorado West Secondary School. Let's meet our judges. Mr. Niraj Tiwari, AmCham CEO. Dr. Rajini Harak Singh, Senior Lecturer in Biotechnology at the University of the West Indies. Akash Samaru, Senior Producer, CNC3. And of course, joining me on stage is our timekeeper, Miss Jamie Simmons. Congratulations to all 6 debate teams for making it to the quarterfinal round of Make Your Point. You have demonstrated your abilities, and we are eager for your contributions today as you all tackle pertinent topics. Before we begin, to our viewers, a gentle reminder that the quarterfinalists were invited to draw randomly from our ballot box to determine their topic and their position ahead of this competition stage. The debate, similarly to the preliminary rounds, will be conducted as follows. Once invited to do so, the proposition will speak for up to 4 minutes to present their opening. Then, the opposition will speak for up to 4 minutes to present their opening. Both teams will then be given 5 minutes to confer among themselves before being allowed 2 minutes each to summarize. The judges will then make their decision to determine which teams advance to the semi-final stage. And a reminder that the judges' decision is final. Debaters, you are required to only speak when invited to do so at the lectern and stay within your time limits. Our timekeeper will ring the bell once to indicate that you have 1 minute left to conclude. When your time is up, you will hear the bell ring twice, after which a continuous ring should you go over the allotted time. Members of the House, while I hope you enjoy this competition, please remain respectful and sensitive to our debaters and our judges. I now invite El Dorado West Secondary School to the stage. I now invite Astor Boys College, San Fernando to the stage. The motion is: climate change is a hoax and therefore has no impact on small island developing states such as our Caribbean islands. Will the proposition speaker, Jalissa Richard of El Dorado West Secondary School, please take the floor?
All protocols observed. Mommy used to say, "Don't cry until I give you something to cry about." Ladies and gentlemen, wipe your tears. Climate change, which refers to long-term shifts in temperature and weather patterns from carbon emissions, is the least of our worries, especially here in the Caribbean. Climate change is in fact a hoax. Many have done a fantastic job in convincing you otherwise, but Mommy didn't raise no fool. No consensus. The pro-climate change scientific community claims that there is consensus when it comes to climate change, when there is not. This is false. There are many well-respected scientists and climatologists who advocate that climate change is indeed a hoax. Freeman Dyson, Bjorn Lomborg, Kiminori Ito, and Nobel Prize winner for physics, Dr. Iva Geva, are just a few who have contradicted the existence of this mythological monolith. Our worthy opponents may argue that they are in the minority. However, as Dr. Michael Crichton reminds us, the greatest scientists in history are great precisely because they broke with the consensus. The science doesn't lie, or does it? Climate models which are utilized to predict climate changes are grossly inaccurate and unreliable. Climatologists such as Dr. Judith Curry and Dr. John Christie have both questioned the veracity in temperature measurement methods and data collection. Even the report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is widely believed to prove that climate change induced by humans has occurred, is seriously flawed according to Dr. Frederick Seitz. Ladies and gentlemen, lies, corruption, and deceit. This is the foundation on which climate change is built. The real culprit. Now, obviously, climate fluctuates, but the catalyst for this is not CO2 emissions. It is as a result of the Milankovitch cycle, which are periodic changes in the orbital characteristics of a planet that controls how much sunlight it receives, thus affecting its climate. It has dictated Earth's climate for millions of years, making the planet swing periodically between ice ages and warmer periods, called interglacials. Guess which period we are living in now? There are other naturally occurring reasons for these fluctuations, such as tectonic shifts and solar activity, but time doesn't permit. Let's be real. The most severe hurricane that affected the Caribbean occurred in 1780. That's 244 years ago. And severe hurricanes have been few and far in between. Climate change alarmists would have you believe that the sky is falling. Last time I checked, we still had a wet and dry season. And the flooding we experience in our country is due to our own indiscriminate development. But I get it. Everyone wants to jump on the noble cause bandwagon. And everyone wants to be a hero. All you need is a good villain. Massa Day is not done. First world countries which have secured sustainable energy can provide a decent standard of living for their population. However, developing countries are struggling to meet the needs of theirs. We, in Sweet TNT, have committed to spending millions of dollars to transition to a solar panel-driven grid per the Paris Agreement. Meanwhile, developed countries such as Japan and Germany have expanded their dependency on fossil fuels for energy because it is cheaper. So whose agenda are we trying to fulfill? Neo-colonization, anyone? Anyone? Bueller? I can go on, really. We had to dig deep because global corporations, the climate change agenda is real. I thank you.
Will the opposition speaker, Mario Monroe of Astor Boys College, San Fernando, please take the floor?
All protocols observed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you may not be able to see, but this is a map of the Caribbean. Now, you're probably wondering why this man holding up this map. Well, you know what's going to happen to this map if we don't fix climate change? But again, I'll ahead of myself here, ladies and gentlemen. So as my opponent stated, climate change may be defined by the United Nations as the long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. It encompasses real topics. Let me give you a few. Hurricanes, flooding, drought, temperatures rising, sea levels rising, shifting wildlife habits is caused by primarily the release of greenhouse gases as well as natural cycles. Now, ladies and gentlemen and judges, we cannot stand here for even a nanosecond and claim that climate change is a hoax. But just for the sake of it and for the proposition, let's try that. So we agree that climate change is a hoax. We agree that the Caribbean sea rising at an estimated 2.5 millimeters per year according to NASA is just child's play. We agree that Hurricane Maria, which devastated the Caribbean a couple of years ago and killed close to 3,000 people, was just a fever dream. We agree that the Belize Barrier Reef, which is currently dying from coral bleaching, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, by the way, was nothing more than some grand conspiracy theory by the Belize government. Are you catching my drift here? Of course, we don't believe climate change is a hoax. Ladies and gentlemen, what I just said for you there is the tip of the sinking iceberg of the changes detrimentally affecting the Caribbean. Did you know that despite the fact that we in the Caribbean are one of the smallest populations in the world with only around 44 million people total, we have the second highest greenhouse gas emissions per capita, according to the Newsday. In fact, the UN considers us the second most prone to natural disasters in the world and ground zero in the climate change emergency. And yet they stand here to say that climate change is a hoax. Now, a couple of years ago, Hurricane Dorian and Hurricane Irma swept the Caribbean. And it didn't just take buildings, infrastructure, and money with it. It took 126 people, 126 lives, 126 stories, 126 emotions. And yet they claim that this is a hoax. So now my question to them is, how is it a hoax? Because 126 people we saw died. We saw on the news they died. 126 people recorded deaths. People lost the brother, the sister, the father, the mother, the brother. People lost all these people. So how can this be a hoax? Now, tourism is a big thing here in the Caribbean. 8 out of 10, according to in-depth news, 8 out of the 10 most populated tourism destinations in the world come from the Caribbean. And when Hurricane Dorian hit, do you know what was the loss to the GDP of that island? 5%, 10%, 100%? No. 244% GDP was the loss. So now I ask, was people losing their jobs, people losing their money, people losing everything the family worked for their whole life? Was that simply a hoax? Did they just make that all up? Can anyone remember that intense heat we experienced a couple of months ago? Well, let me specify which heat wave I'm speaking about because we have so much here. The one that had the electricity and the AC units skyrocket to the highest it had ever been in Trinidad's history. We don't even need scientific research for that. We all experienced the heat. We all felt it. Down to our own chairperson, Ms. Priyanka Lala, who's a climate change activist herself, by the way, said in an article published by the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center that she recalls playing a football match with one of her friends. One of them collapsed due to the heat. And I quote, "It had not even been an hour, but the heat was so excruciating." So my question now is, was that a hoax? Did she make that all up? How can we discredit decades of scientific evolution, evaluation, dedication, experimentation? And what is this trend of degrading science? Miss, you're a scientist yourself. I'm sure you appreciate the merit of scientific research. Ladies and gentlemen, our Earth is speaking to us. We cannot turn our back to its play. Thank you.
What a start to our quarterfinal round. Both teams now have 5 minutes to confer. And to you, our viewing audience, we'll see you after the break. This is Make Your Point Season 2, the quarterfinals. Both teams have now had 5 minutes to confer and are ready to summarize. Will the proposition speaker to summarize, Kidra Kelly Clearmont of El Dorado West Secondary School, please take the floor.
That is what first world brainwashing looks like. And anyone who speaks contrary is either jailed, discredited, or silenced. Do you know that the lack of air pollution is contributing to the increase of global temperatures? According to Gavin Schmidt, director of the Goddard Institute of Space Studies, the lack of particles in the air is not enough to shield the direct harmful rays of the sun. Why? Because everyone is doing such a great job of saving the environment. I propose a question to the opposition. Feeling a little chilly, are we? Well, you can thank carbon emissions for that. The reality, ladies and gentlemen, is that fossil fuels are still the cheapest form of energy to date. Right now, our life is governed by fossil fuels, as is the majority of the world. Alliance would urge you to believe that we need to make a shift away from fossil fuels now. They even have a slogan, 1.5 to stay alive. That's fear-mongering. If we adopt alternative energy sources in the name of a hoax, economic and social costs would be great. Large countries like China and India get most of their energy from coal. So what sense does it make for us to switch? Listen, crime is a serious problem in Trinidad. So is poverty, inflation, and education, potholes, water, and the list goes on. But you know what? Social problems are not profitable. You know what is? Electric cars and social panels. Climate change does not affect the Caribbean. However, bad spending and neocolonialism does. I thank you.
Will the opposition speaker to summarize, Jaheim Nicholas of Astor Boys College, San Fernando, please take the floor.
Climate change happens over a long period of time. The Industrial Revolution was in 1760. That was only 264 years ago. And since then, we have been experiencing an increasingly rise in temperatures, right? Step outside. hotter than usual. In fact, when I was a child, my mother would say, long time, you could go under the tree and you could sit down and you wouldn't feel that hot. It was cool, it was nice. That was the niceness of Trinidad long ago. Knowledge is responsibility. We see why these deniers say climate change is a hoax. Ever since the discovery that the Earth is under threat due to rising temperatures, we are still alive. Seasons come and go. Just last month, Trinidad had the greatest festival on Earth. It seems the Earth is still marvelously intact. Despite these claims, do not be deceived. The evidence unequivocally shows otherwise. SIDs like us in the Caribbean, SIDs in fact, not just the Caribbean, but Tuvalu is our country in the SIDs, are particularly vulnerable and susceptible to the effects of climate change. Dismissing it as a hoax only exacerbates the challenges they face. While it may be tempting to deny the reality of climate change, the facts speak for themselves. Rising sea levels, Tuvalu sinking. In 2005 and 2020, we finished the Greek alphabet. We finished the Latin alphabet and moved to the Greek alphabet to name our hurricanes. That's an increase in frequency and intensity of natural disasters. Did you know Hurricane Lee, Jova, and Otis increased from 4 to 5 in less than 24 hours? That has never been recorded. Well, it's only 3 times it's been recorded in history.
This concludes the first of 3 head-to-heads in our quarterfinal round. Judges, your feedback.
I'll go first, starting with Jalicia. Jalicia, I thought you were very confident. You came up there like how you introduced Mami in your opening. You cited several sources. You had great diction and articulation. What I think worked well for you is you also provided an alternative theory. So it's not just that you said climate change is a hoax, but you provided an alternate explanation. What I would like for Mario, again, came up very confident. I like that you mixed the formality with the informality in the way that you spoke, a little folksiness, and you highlighted the impact several times, which was great. What I felt though is that you showed concurrence but not causality. So you said what happens, what is happening in terms of climate, but you didn't link it specifically to CO2 emissions or man's activities, etc.
I agree with what he said, that you pointed out a plausible counter proposition, and I think that really worked well for you. I also agree that I don't think both teams really addressed what each other said. You kind of came with your prepared speech and didn't really specifically address the points that were brought up, so we didn't get too much back and forth there, which was a little unfortunate. Mario and Jaheim, I think both of you guys actually, in my opinion as a scientist, you had kind of the easier side to debate. And I really feel like you could have drawn some stronger conclusions, used a little bit more convincing data.
I'm going to start with Eldo West, and it isn't lost on me the difficult position you all put in to try and claim climate change isn't real and it's a hoax. So I take that. Jalisha, I really liked the beginning, good charisma, good confidence, good presence. However, I thought that maybe you would have read a little bit too much from your prepared speech. And if we go through the rules, you'd realize that reading and memorization are 2 things you're looking for in a debate. Nirad would have mentioned it in terms of presenting an alternate theory. At times I felt it was a little bit too up there for maybe the lay person. So maybe if you could slow it down and try to, going forward, use rhetoric a bit different. Are we going for an emotional appeal? Are we going for a logical appeal? Something like that to consider. Very quickly to Astra, to Mario. Mario, I thought it was a really nice opening. I like those things. The use of props, I like theater, I like drama. Good use of props. I mean, we all saw that you struggle to tear the paper, but that's fine. Paper could be a little strong sometimes. Good use of signposting, I would say. And signposting, folks, is a technique where you bring up what the other side would have said, and then you counter it. So it reminds us what you all are countering. But again, claim, evidence, kind of lacked on impact.
Thank you, judges. Our debaters today have definitely given us a lot to think about. Congratulations to both teams. We take another short break, and when we return, it's our second head-to-head. Marabella South Secondary School versus Queen's Royal College. Welcome to Make Your Point, Season 2, the quarterfinals. The motion is LGBTQIA citizens must be explicitly included for protection in the Equal Opportunity Act. Will the proposition speaker, Shael Charles of Marabella South Secondary School, please take the floor?
All protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, this morning I invite you to put on your virtual glasses and picture this. African people not being allowed to sit in front of a bus. Or, in Trinidad and Tobago, young men restricted from crossing the graduation stage just because of their hairstyles. Or, it's the year 2017 and a Muslim girl is turned away from wearing a hijab at a local bank. Ladies and gentlemen, there is no need to imagine because sadly, these are examples of discrimination that has taken place in our beloved land where every creed and race finds an equal place. The fact that these victims were given justice is because they are protected by the Equal Opportunity Act, an act which makes it unlawful to discriminate against people in certain areas or categories of public life on 7 status grounds, and by victimization and offensive behavior. No, the opposition may try to baffle you with big words in true sesquipedalian style, and perhaps even try to suggest that this is about sexuality, but not on this International Women's Day with the campaign theme of inspiring inclusion. We believe that this debate is not simply about sexuality, but about equality. We therefore firmly believe that the LGBTQIA citizens must be explicitly included for protection in the Equal Opportunity Act. This is because as citizens, everyone is entitled to equal opportunities. This group is at a higher risk of evidence and acts of bullying, and because not doing so can have a negative reputation on our country. Let's discuss equal rights as citizens. As stated in the Equal Opportunity Number 2 Bill 2011, equality of opportunity is a principle that all people, and I repeat, all people should be treated equally, unhampered by artificial barriers or prejudice or preferences, except when particular distinctions can be explicitly justified. As it relates to this group, can we truly explicitly justify any discrimination? I think not. These human beings who bleed the red blood as any of us from Trinidad and Tobago are entitled to the same tolerance we speak of in our nation watchwords. I will now allow my colleague, Katia Scott, to further speak on this issue.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, this is a serious matter. In 2019, in the Dime Doe case, a black trans woman was murdered in South Carolina. Even before, in 2004, after gay activist Brian Williamson was murdered, in the Jamaican Observer published a letter which read, "To be gay in Jamaica is to be dead." And right here at home, we have examples. In 2012, the Trinidad and Tobago Guardian had an article entitled "Gay in TNT, The Struggles Against Discrimination." Well, luckily, Kevin Sassy Paul Darlington was alive to tell the tale of being stabbed several times by unknown attackers. This is not the case, however. In 2017, Sasha Fierce was murdered at a park in Port of Spain. Need I say more, ladies and gentlemen? What about bullying? According to Mental Health America, this group are nearly twice as likely to be called names, verbally harassed, and physically assaulted at schools compared to the non-LGBTQ peers. This means that their mental health and education, not to mention their physical well-being, is at risk. If this is the case, are we protecting all of our citizens equally? I want everyone now to look at the worldwide stage. What is happening globally? So is Trinidad and Tobago willing to have sanctions imposed like Uganda for passing an anti-LGBTQI bill? My dear opponents, it is time we change our narrow view. Thank you.
Will the opposition speaker, Jonah Bujarat of Queen's Royal College, please take the floor?
All protocols observed. First and foremost, given the nature of this motion, allow me to issue a disclaimer in true CNC3 fashion. The views and opinions that will now be expressed are not necessarily those held by myself and the institution, but it is solely for the purpose of academic debate. Now, having laid that premise, permit me to reiterate the motion. It poses the inquiry, should LGBTQIA citizens be explicitly included for protection in the Equal Opportunity Act? Now, upon hearing that motion, your perception will probably be skewed towards the proposition side. Admittedly, mine was at first. But upon further investigation of the Equal Opportunity Act, I came to certain realizations that I now wish to share with you. You see, the Equal Opportunity Act seeks to prohibit discrimination through establishing the Equal Opportunity Commission, bestowed with jurisdiction to resolve alleged matters of discrimination. Now, this sounds unequivocally positive, but I'll have you know this process entails discriminated persons issuing complaints to the Commission, and the lodgement of said complaints has been known to involve stressful, prolonged processions and disruptions to the lives of the complainants. This discourages individuals from making complaints either at first or subsequent, and hence the discrimination is often allowed to perpetuate in organizations owing to the ineffectiveness of the act to deal with discrimination in a timely manner. To accentuate this point, consider this. In 2021, Guardian Media reported of a man that was finally freed of a murder charge after 20 years of being wrongfully held in custody due to delayed prosecutions. So allow me to ask, if our judicial system is capable of prolonging a murder case for that long, what more for a discrimination complaint from a person who is alive and well? The point is, ladies and gentlemen, though impressive on paper, the Equal Opportunity Act is not nearly as effective as it may come across. Furthermore, we must take heed of the cultural obstacles we face as a society. Legislation on its own rarely ever enhances societal perspective, as illustrated in 2017, where we legally instituted the speed limit to be 80 kilometers an hour. But owing to the collective resistance of the public, that inevitably had to be amended back to the 100 kilometers an hour. You see, this societal phenomenon is why I would suggest to my opposition to focus more on broadening and enhancing perspectives rather than amending an act, enforcing legislation, and possibly risking civil unrest. You see, lastly, I'd like to illustrate the superiority of public advocacy contrasted with government legislation in its ability to influence change. In 2021, Scotiabank, a private entity, decided to extend health benefits to same-sex couples. And believe it or not, that single action captivated the attention of Ian Roach, the chairman of the Equal Opportunity Commission. And it induced the pressure necessary for the Equal Opportunity Act to facilitate the LGBT plus individuals, or at least consider it. Therefore, I respectfully recommend that the opposition not put the cart before the horse. You see, there are measures that ought to precede this immediate inclusion of these individuals into the Equal Opportunity Act. Because in a society where Martin Luther King's words still rings today, fostering perspectives like one must bear the moral responsibility to disobey laws if they find them unjust, if the opposition are to achieve their goal without massive public disobedience, I suggest that they lay emphasis on not haphazard law enforcement, but the development of proper notions with regards to what is just and what is unjust. Thank you.
We now take a short break while our teams confer for 5 minutes before summary. To our viewers, we'll see you after the break. This is Make Your Point Season 2. Both teams have now had 5 minutes to confer and are ready to summarize. Will the proposition speaker to summarize, Zeke Ausuri of Marabella South Secondary, please take the floor.
The opposition stated that the Equal Opportunity Act helps people seek protection from discrimination, but doesn't the LGBTQ members get faced with discrimination on a daily basis? In summary, our position is advocating for the explicit inclusion of this group in the protection of the Equal Opportunity Act. Today, we have argued that the discrimination which is particularly against this group is a pressing issue that needs to be addressed under the Equal Opportunity Act. And this debate is about equality for all citizens, as everyone deserves an equal opportunity, regardless. Let me tell you something, and listen to me, and listen to me clearly. I am going to tell you why this group should be included in the protection under the Equal Opportunity Act, because this group faces a higher risk of violence and bullying, which can lead to a country's international reputation being harmed, and it also has a negative impact on their well-being, mental health, and education. We have stated to you several cases and statistics to support the argument. How much more do you want? Are you listening to what I am saying? We are advocating for a stronger legal protection for all people, regardless, as the Equal Opportunity Act stated, that it helps people seek protection against discrimination. We even highlighted to you the need to move beyond colonial era laws and stand together for equality. And that is why the LGBTQ plus citizens should and must be included in the Equal Opportunity Act. Thank you.
Will the opposition speaker to summarize, Jabril Ghafoor of Queen's Royal College, please take the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we aren't saying that the Equal Opportunity Act is useless or that we, the opposition, want to deprive the LGBTQIA citizens of their rights. However, we are saying that the Equal Opportunity Act may not be as effective as the proposition may want you to believe. The Act discusses discrimination and what qualifies as a discriminatory action as it relates to employment, education, and the exchange of services. However, the Act also clearly states exceptions in which discrimination is allowed by persons. So even if the LGBTQIA was added to the Act, members of the group will still face instances in which they themselves would consider discrimination. So we can't completely expect that legislation would have any great effect on how the group is treated already. This leads me to reiterate what my colleague Joan has said. For there to be any substantial change on how the group is treated, there must be public advocacy on the matter. Legislation is not very effective in reducing the problem at hand, which is offering a new perspective and understanding to the public. In fact, legislation has shown to make people more resistant towards the thing they're getting people to do. So, ladies and gentlemen, for there to be any change in a person's morals and virtues, we must first advocate for change. Advocacy for change of the constitutional human rights of a nation is the first step in changing the minds of the people. So, let's not change perspectives with rules and regulations, but let's try to solve it by educating our fellow men and women on morals and virtues. Thank you.
This concludes the second of 3 head-to-heads in our quarterfinal round. Judges, your feedback.
I want to start with Marabella, South Secondary. Shail, loved your opening. Immediately, you used an ethical and an emotional appeal to the audience, which I love. However, Shail, you're a very strong speaker. You made really good points. My advice, take a pause. Allow us to digest it. Allow for impact. So take a dramatic pause sometimes, right? Remember, you need to be clear, logical, and coherent as well. Eh? QRC. Jonah, I need to ask, you thought you were going to get extra points with the CNC thing at the top? Because you may have. Good use of underscoring the Equal Opportunities Act and the Equal Opportunities Commission. I really like that approach, and I like that strategy because where they may have used empathy and ethics, you all went with logic on this side, which was, I thought, a really good strategy. This is a technique everyone can, adopt going forward. There's nothing wrong with acknowledging the strength of your opponent's argument because that allows you now to say why my position is stronger.
Marabella, Shael, I thought, you came out really strong, very passionate at the beginning. It was very dramatic. I loved it. But again, it was, as Akash said, you had a nice cadence. You did pause sometimes, but maybe not long enough because sometimes it was a little too garbled. But overall, I think Your strategy was excellent, that you spoke a lot about the motivation for the act. You spoke a lot about discrimination. I like that you talked about it sort of, you gave the motivation, and then your partner came in and gave some very specific data. QRC, you really had a tough position to defend. So I was wondering when you were coming up there, I was really wondering how you were going to do this. And I thought you used a really effective strategy of very, eloquently enlightening us about the implications of the act, the processes and involved, and what that means for the complainant, right?
I thought this was an excellent debate, as was the first one. I want to disagree a little bit with Akash, though. I didn't think that the switching out worked, because if you're going to do something that is different from the norm, there must be a purpose. And I think both styles were very similar. But Jonah, I just want to acknowledge, I was a judge in a round that you were in last year, and I've seen some growth in how you present, and I just want to acknowledge that. I felt your tone, I felt the way you presented, very clear, very confident. I like that you started with an acknowledgement that you were leaning to the other side until you did your research. And I felt you all were making a point that you agree with the intent of the proposition, which is to ensure that everyone has equality, but not the method of finding that equality.
Thank you, judges, and congratulations to both teams for their insightful remarks. We take another short break, and when we return, it's our third and final head-to-head for the quarterfinal round. Hillview College versus San Fernando Central Secondary School. Welcome back to Make Your Point, Season 2. The motion is: should parents ban all forms of social media consumption for children under 17? Will the proposition speaker, Kavish Prasad of Hillview College, please take the floor?
Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me as I adjust this black blazer. It's dark funeral colors, symbolizing my mourning for the loss of our children's innocence in this digital age. Merriam-Webster defines social media as forms of electronic communication where users create online communities to share ideas, information, and audiovisual content. But it's so much more. According to a Stanford article, modern social media apps are actually engineered to trigger significant dopamine releases in the brain, akin to that of heroin and alcohol. This effect is believed to rewire the dopamine pathways of the brain, driving users to addiction and dependency. Ask yourselves, if I took away all your social media apps for a week, what would you do? How much free time would you have? The opponents of this motion may lead you to believe that social media is a tool in communication and studies. However, simple CSEC pass rates say otherwise. In the past 15 years, during the advent of social media, CSEC mathematics pass rates have declined by a whopping 14.1%. And moving on, most parents, you seek to keep your child's safety a paramount priority. But social media undermines that with its inherent risks. In a survey done by the nonprofit Thorn, 36% of children under 13 experience sexual exploitation online. And of that statistic, 63%, they refuse to tell a guardian. Because of what? Shame and fear. Take, for instance, as reported by Guardian Media, the 2023 arrest of an 18-year-old man who lured and sexually assaulted an 11-year-old girl using social media. 11 years old. Now consider how social media facilitates cyberbullying, enabling perpetrators to harass and intimidate victims with complete anonymity, all while making bullying inescapable from the classroom to their phone. According to a survey done by the Journal of Health Economics, cyberbullying impacts increased suicidal thinking by 14.5%. And aside from this, social media has experienced an uptick in harmful trends and posts. A local example being the death of Emmanuel Potillon, who passed away while attempting a viral TikTok blackout challenge. Users wrapped a belt around their neck to see how long they could hold their breath for. Emmanuel was 9 years old when he passed away from this challenge. 9 years old. The United States just yesterday began an attempt to ban TikTok due to privacy concerns, but also stated this blackout challenge in their complaint. Furthermore, in 2022, Guardian Media also reported that school children were circulating numerous local fight videos, gruesome content, murder scenes, especially on Instagram. And may I remind you that according to non-profit Thorn, over 10% of Instagram's user base is found to be under 17, with many more falsifying their age. And lastly, the opponents of this motion, they may lead you to believe that these cases of child exploitation, cyberbullying, etc. are far and few between. But let me ask them, is that what you would say to the parents of these 50-something children who have died due to social media, passed away? That it was just a chance, one in a few, something that slipped through regulations? No, you wouldn't dare. As such, it's time we act fast to prevent these blank spaces here at the bottom from being filled up. We must ban social media consumption for all those under 17. Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Will the opposition speaker, Aisha Brathwaite of San Fernando Central Secondary School, please take the floor?
As the proposition stated, social media is a tool, and the danger of any tool is how it is used, not if it is used. I beg the proposition, show me a moment in history where bans were effective long term. God's ban of the forbidden fruit in Genesis? Yeah, right. How about the 1920s ban of alcohol in the US? Oh, I know, it's TNT's ban of the purchasing of illegal firearms. Judges, audience, parents, let sense prevail. Our very own Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Keith Rowley, admitted on a CNC3 platform that banning something only makes it more attractive to those who want to use it, emphasizing that in today's technological world, one cannot truly ban social media. Deborah Heitner, expert on children's relationships with media and technology, supports by stating, demonizing social media is not the answer to online safety. Parents should rather focus on teaching kids how to responsibly navigate social media and manage online privacy and decision making. Bans are therefore a lazy policy. They fail to examine the true causes and effects of destructive human behavior. Banning children under 17 from access to all forms of social media is simply short-sighted and leaves them unprepared for the realities of the technological world. Social media is a tool. Teens can access Instagram accounts such as Know Your Caribbean and National Archives TT, which explore and celebrate regional cultural identities and histories. Our very own chairperson, Priyanka Lala, has been using social media since she was 12 to discuss topics such as climate change and the rights of a child. Social media usage supports two of those rights, the right to education and the right to be heard. Imagine if our parents banned us all from educational social media like YouTube and Google Classroom during the COVID-19 lockdown. And what would have happened to our mental health if we couldn't vent to our friends on WhatsApp or express ourselves on Discord? Social media exposes us to news from around the world and gets us excited about understanding big world issues, such as this topic today. The Newport Academy insists that such positive social connections leave teens happier and physically healthier. But let's be fair to the proposition. Not all teens use social media in such positive ways. That's where parental guidance comes in. Take me, for instance. My parents taught me proper etiquette and how to identify and avoid dangerous situations online. They also monitor my content consumption and give me
screen time limits to curb addiction. But I have a friend whose parents banned her from social media altogether. And guess what? Every day she obsessively sneaks on friends' phone to consume as much social media as she can. What will happen when she turns 17? Will she magically know how to manage her online presence responsibly? As a young teen who lives daily in an ever-evolving digital world, I take up my authority and represent the voice of my peers. Parents should not ban all social media consumption for their under 17 children. They should teach responsible navigation at every developmental stage and exercise supervision. Food for thought. Thank you.
Both teams now have 5 minutes to confer. And to you, our viewing audience, we take a short break. Please do stay with us. Welcome back to Make Your Point Season 2. Both teams have now had 5 minutes to confer and are ready to summarize. So will the proposition speaker to summarize, Seth Mohammed of Hillview College, please take the floor.
Every parent's worst nightmare is the loss of their child. And tragically, in today's digital era, social media has become a breeding ground for these nightmares. Dangers, including cyberbullying, harassment, and numerous safety risks, which can lead to suicide, sexual assault, and extortion, are why we, the proposition, support parents in the banning of all forms of social media for those under 17. So not permanently, but as a means to safeguard and protect the children of tomorrow. My opponents have called social media a tool, but dangers outweigh the risks. Would you give a child a power saw or let them drive before the age of 18? No. My opponents have also mentioned social media providing educational opportunities. However, there are much better alternatives to these online, such as Pennacool.com or Khan Academy, which provide a vast amount of knowledge incomparable to that provided by YouTube. Social development is also an important point. But I would argue that greater social development can be gained by face-to-face, person-to-person interactions. A study by Harvard shows that even a handshake can lead to a more fruitful and more open conversation. They have also mentioned parental supervision. But how are parents supposed to regulate their children when they themselves cannot get off of Facebook, TikTok, Instagram? Furthermore, children purposefully hide their social media activity from their parents. I must ask if my opponents would show their parents their chat histories of social media activity. Would they? Most definitely not. To close, my opponents have attempted to convince you that social media is not that bad. However, they have failed to properly address the issue at hand, which is the danger to which we willingly expose the children of our world, the future of our world to. Thank you.
Will the opposition speaker to summarize, Diego Gadgeta of San Fernando Central Secondary School, please take the floor.
Parents of teens today grew up in the 80s and 90s, before the dawn of the digital era. With all due respect, their generation was not raised in a culture of social media. Instead, their social technology was dial-up and phones with antennas. Also, I would show my parents my chats. Jody Gold, author of Screen Smart Parenting, teaches that because of this, they cannot relate to their children's world. So instead, they respond with fear and try to ban us from our norm. In an effort to help parents escape that pessimistic and ineffective approach, Jody lists modernized parenting techniques that will prepare children to safely navigate online spaces. 1, encourage teens to use social media for honest self-expression and social connectedness. And 2, teach them how to prioritize their time so that they can avoid addiction. The proposition, the list can go on, but where are the parents? Maybe the parents need to do some introspection on where they went wrong instead of blaming social media. Judges, audience, and opponents, where was Emmanuel's parents? As my colleague and I have clearly demonstrated, bans are an outdated approach to solving problems with social media. Bans don't take children's needs into consideration, which leads to them scheming behind their parents' backs. From the very beginning, Adam and Eve ate the forbidden fruit, proving that it is human nature to rebel against that which is forbidden. So, audience, do not adopt my opponent's short sight and hill view. If your parents were to ban you from all social media, be honest, would you obey? Thank you.
This concludes our third and final quarterfinal debate. Judges, your feedback.
Kavish, you started off, and you really did amazingly to give so much content in such a short period. You spoke about addiction. You spoke about you tied the argument to the pass rates for CSEC and the use of social media. You spoke about the risks, anonymity, mental health, and you also gave a lot of local examples. You really packed a lot in there, but at a pace that I was able to follow. So kudos to that on that. Asia, you came again with an excellent set of content, and I really like that at the beginning you specifically said we're not talking about just a ban, right? You really masterfully navigated that complexity of the complexity of the situation, and you also did so in a very likable and confident way. So I appreciated that.
Keeping with the theme of social media, I really only have heart reacts only for you all here. This was fantastic. And if debates are fundamental to a functioning democracy in this country, I think we are in good hands in the future. Not just you all, but the rest. But I think this here, what we saw here, is a model debate going forward, especially for Make Your Point and anyone who will be looking on. At first, I was wondering where the jacket came from. I don't know if I thought this guy student council rep, or did he miss the memo? But, it was a nice use of props, strong start. Good evidence-based arguments, good use of educational statistics. You spoke about the reality of sexual harassment, cyberbullying, very evidence-based. Going over to, you all are the defending champs, right? Yeah, it shows. Very good, high quality debates. I like that you all also gave an evidence-based approach to this. Use very strong language, lazy policy, I like that. I really like that. I like that you all would have, listed the positives of social media while you also acknowledged its inherent risks, and you suggested solutions as well, which was good.
Yeah, excellent debate. I want to echo that. Kavish and Asia Lee, I really look forward to seeing what you all do in the future. I thought you all were really, really good. Specifically, I like the use of the props, the way that you incorporated them into the presentation. I thought it worked. I thought in the end where you left the blank spaces, things like that, it draws people in, and it's a nice connection. Asia Lee, I thought you were fantastic, really fantastic. I don't know if I were them, when that look that you threw at the end, I would have melted. It was deadly. But overall, your presentation was very complete. It was clear. It spoke to the issue, and it was really, really good. I don't have any advice to you. Maybe I'll come to you for advice on some of my presentations.
Thank you, judges. What a remarkable and thought-provoking debate. Congratulations to both our teams. We now take another short break while we allow our judges time to confer and make their decision to which 4 schools will progress to the semi-final stage. Please do stay with us. This is Make Your Point, Season 2, and the results are in. Once again, a huge congratulations to all 6 schools. The 3 schools moving on automatically to the semi-finals of Make Your Point are San Fernando Central Secondary School, Queens Royal College, and El Dorado West Secondary School. And the final spot, by way of the highest tally of points among the 3 remaining schools, is Hillview College. Let's now give a loud round of applause for the schools who got this far and now exit the competition with their heads high for their remarkable showing. I would now like to ask a representative from each of our 4 schools to pick from our ballot box to determine their position and their topic ahead of the next competition stage. I invite San Fernando Central Secondary School to pick from the ballot box, Queens Royal College, El Dorado West Secondary School, Hillview College to pick from the ballot box. A reminder that the letter P is for proposition and the letter O for opposition on the numbers 10 and 11. The numbers, of course, signifying the next 2 topics of this competition to be debated. This concludes the quarterfinal round of Make Your Point Season 2. Please join us again next Monday at 8 p.m. on CNC3 for the semi-final round to watch these 4 schools debate. See you again. I'm Priyanka Lala. Thank you to our judges, Mr. Nirad Tiwari, Dr. Rajini Haraksing, and Mr. Akash Samaru. And congratulations to all schools progressing. San Fernando Central Secondary School, Queens Royal College, El Dorado West Secondary School, and Hillview College. This was Make Your Point, and I'll see you at the semifinals.